I'm a rewarder of innovation. Probably more than I should be, to be honest, but I guess what it comes down to is that there's so much iterative stuff coming out today that when I see someone that's trying to be different or push the envelope, then I take notice. And to that end, I was asked by Doubleshoot to consult with them on their application, and this is my report from the field to you and to them. Doubleshoot is a smartphone application that was originally designed to track performance within military organizations and law enforcement agencies, specifically in Israel. Now it's being ported over to the commercial side of the house, and while it does contain many competitive functions, you all know my thoughts on competitive shooting. I know that many of you share that sentiment, so I won't rehash them here. What I find most valuable about this application is its 0 functions. You set up a firearm profile by selecting the caliber and the sighting system that you're using, and prepare to 0 by printing one of their targets, setting the range, and the number of rounds that you intend to fire. You then prep the app by taking a photo of the target that auto-calibrates the app. And so now that it has logged the hits, we can hit adjustment instructions, and it gives us our adjustment for our RMR there. Let's go adjust the RMR and see what happens when we print a new group. So I suppose part of the problem is that you actually have to be able to shoot. Never claimed to be able to do that. Now, there's more hits than there should be, so we're gonna have to do some doctoring here. Well, actually, never mind. It has identified which were from the first group and which were from the second group. So we can go do our adjustments. I suppose the interesting thing is I don't remember which bullet holes were where. But the app does. So I guess one of the things that I didn't really consider in my initial conception of the app was the value of having something that maps your hits session to session and stores that information. That said, we're about to print this thing up quite a bit, because what we have here is a 1022 that we did some time ago. There's a full video out on it. This is a very short barrel with a long suppressor on it, and the idea behind this is that if you shoot standard velocity ammunition, it drops the velocity of that round down to subsonic, regardless if you're shooting subsonic ammunition or if you're shooting full powered ammunition. Well, today we're gonna shoot high velocity ammunition, and what that does is it turns this gun into a scatter gun, because some of them are under, some of them are over. And I wanna see if this app can sift through the junk. Adjustment instructions. Looks like it wants to go 7 clicks left. So looking at this, it's marking some extra hits in our original group. It has given us a center of group approximately right there, and I'm gonna call that pretty good for this gun, especially because this is, again, a scatter gun. So I find this app's detection capabilities pretty robust, and I like the ability to be able to, in real time, edit any artifacts that the thing may have picked up. I also really appreciate its ability to track group to group. That said, you know what time it is. It's time for critiques. And I think the most obvious critique would be the library of optics. I mentioned earlier in the video that this was developed in Israel, and this optics list looks very Israeli to me. I really appreciate the individual adjustment screens, and I find them very well done, however, somewhat limited. As an example here, it has the Vortex Viper listed, and My question is, which Vortex Viper? A quick search on Vortex's website shows, as of the timing of this video, 14 offerings under the Viper line. Some of those have multiple reticles, and of those, there are several variants that are in MOA and several variants that are in milliradian. So it is simply not possible to have one optic profile to cover the Vortex Viper. And what I would guess is likely whatever variant they were using in Israel at the time was what was ported into the app. Now, if I were to critique my own critique for a second, that's a fairly nitpicky thing to pick on. Regardless of how you slice it, this aspect of the app will never be complete. Regardless of how many optics you add to it, there will always be more, and there will be more each year. So this is a database problem. It will be continuously updated throughout the life of the app. It's going to happen that way. I do have a fix, though, that they could implement. I'm not going to call it an easy fix because I am not a programmer, but I would think a really good way to make this app more versatile is to add a custom optic option in that library. All you would need to know is the scale and the increments of the optic that you're using, because if it's in MOA or if it's in milrad, it doesn't really matter what the size or the optic is, as long as you know what the clicks do and how much each click does. Then you could conceivably adapt this to any optic that you're going to slap onto any firearm at any point in time. And then my last critique, I suppose, is more of a administrative issue, and that is that the targets that the app relies on for its calibration have a default paper size of A4, which is slightly larger in dimension than what you know as the standard letter size piece of paper, the 8.5 by 11, right? It is not a big deal to switch the paper size in your printer to print on regular printer paper. If you don't calibrate your printer to A4 to print on your letter size piece of paper, your 8.5 by 11, and you just print a letter size image on the letter size piece of paper, what you've done is delineate the calibration between the target and the application, and then your data will be completely off when you're trying to make your adjustments. However, if you try to do that from the smartphone, you are likely not going to be able to change the paper size from your smartphone. I can do it on my computer, my hard station, but I can't do it on the smartphone. I think that this is something that probably should be recalibrated to work within the target market. Again, as a representative of the target market, I have never owned a single scrap of A4 paper, and I will never own a scrap of A4 paper. It's just not something that I will use. It's not something that even fits in envelopes here in the United States, to be completely honest. And then in closing today, where I would like to see this app go that I don't think is unattainable is, let's say, for instance, that I've used the app to zero my firearm. And let's say I put a 25-yard zero on it. Maybe it's dark outside and I ran down to the local indoor range that's still open or something like that, and they only got like a 25-yard range. But I actually want a 50-yard zero for the next time I go out and do it for real. We already have an existing zero. We already have the caliber and conceivably the velocity of that munition. We also have the optics and all the data associated with it. The difference between the 50-yard zero and the 25 existing zero is pure applied mathematics governed by fundamental forces that are uniform across this planet. And it's not that big of a leap to get a computer more powerful several times over than what we used to land on the moon to be able to bridge that gap. Anyway, that's what I would like to see. I'm interested to hear from you guys. What do you think about what we discussed here today? I think that advances in technologies like automatic hit detection are fairly pioneering, and there's a lot of potential here.